This is the Self Storage Podcast, where we share the knowledge and skills from the industry's leading investors, developers, and operators to help you launch and grow your self-storage business. I'm your host, Scott Meyers, and over the past 16 years, we have acquired, developed, converted, and syndicated over 2 million square feet of self-storage nationwide with the help of my incredible team at selfstorageinvesting.com, who has helped thousands of people achieve greatness in self-storage. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Self Storage Podcast. I am your host, Scott Meyers, and today I'm excited to introduce to you my friend and mastermind member, Mr. Scott Krone. Scott is a Chicago native whose career began in architecture in 1991 by pursuing his Master's of Architecture from the Illinois Institute of Technology. While earning his degree, he also worked as a project manager for Optima, where he was the project manager on 3 multifamily projects in the Chicago area, totaling over 500 units. In 1998, Scott founded CODA, his design and build consulting firm, which has won numerous awards, including the International Green Good Design Award in 2010, Best of House in 2014 and 2015, and the Design Evanston Award. Their work has been featured in publications such as Dream Homes at Chicago, Midwest Luxury Homes, the NBC TV show Taste, and in multiple Ace Hardware commercials nationwide. In 2012, Scott founded the CODA Management Group, which specializes in managing a wide range of real estate, including single-family and multifamily homes, retail, commercial warehousing, self-storage, and multi-use athletic spaces, totaling more than $55 million in assets. In addition, Scott has also authored the book High Performance Homes, Navigating the Green Road to Your Dream Home, a book for homeowners seeking to incorporate green technology into their homes. Scott is a valued member of our self-storage mastermind, and I hope you enjoy this little glimpse into the life of another one of the highly successful members of our community. So without further ado, I would like to welcome my friend, Mr. Scott Krone. Hey, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to this time.
I am as well. It's been a long time coming. We've chatted about this at the Mastermind quite a bit, and I'm just thankful that our schedules finally aligned. And so, I give everybody a little bit of a background on yourself, the bio and the introduction, but if you would, why don't you fill in the gaps and then let us know what you're focusing on here in 2021?
Well, my background is multifamily, and it was actually thanks to you that I got exposed to self-storage. I had a client that went to one of your seminars and came back and said, I have to find distressed self-storage because that's what I was told to do. And we searched for 2 years trying to find distressed self-storage. We couldn't do it. And so that's when I convinced him that perhaps we should look at developing self-storage. So our focus has been developers, has always been to, first and foremost, I'm a developer. And then with our design build background, that has always been my focus, and seeing where we can create the biggest value or create the value add within a property is through the development. So that's our focus. We acquired a property in November in Louisville. It's 144,000 square feet. We're going to be converting 80 of that into self-storage, and then having the other 60,000 being flex warehouse space. And we're in the contract process for a new development in Northwest Ohio. We're going to be developing about 400 Class B self-storage facilities. And so that's on our plate right now, and we're obviously looking for other opportunities as well.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, your background started, your career started in architecture, and you and I both know when we go to architects on the storage side, first of all, I'm always, regardless, I get sticker shock when I see what the cost is for the drawings and what they do. But tell me, if you would, a little bit about how has that helped you in your background when you then get a set of drawings from an architect, or just even in the initial design phase? Do you still get your hands wet in that, and or at least how has that helped you as you begin to embark upon a project?
Absolutely. I mean, right now we're in the planning process of that one, so I'm laying out the design of the project, if you will. So every project that we do, I'm coming up with the overall design, and then we're hiring local architects to do it. So my background is I do have a master's of architecture. Mm-hmm. And when I first started in real estate, my professor owned a real estate development architectural contracting company. And so my master's thesis was developing a 400 unit, $100 million project. Mm-hmm. And so when we look at it as a developer, I can know what I need to do from a design point of view to make it economically work. Mm-hmm. And then also what the most cost effective way to do that. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not going to design this elaborate thing, which I know then the costs are going to come super high and then makes the development not work. We really factor in all three sides: the development, the construction, the buildability of it, as well as the design and how they play together. So very much I'm still have my hands in the design of different things.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, so let's shift to the current market, and you've got an a very aggressive development schedule, and depending upon who you listen to or what you read in the marketplace in the trade magazines, a number of these, the larger players and national players have pulled back. At least that's saying that they are, and a lot of that is due to funding. The banks and the primary lenders, they get a little more skittish in looking at speculative or development projects as we navigate through the tail end of the pandemic and the economy that we're in and heading into perhaps a recession. We know that there's still a demand for storage in certain infill areas and pockets. We can always find good sites. It just depends, like we saw in the last recession, on whether the banks are willing to lend us the money to go out and build them. So have you seen a slowdown, or have you seen a change in the rates and terms from when you initially started these projects, and if they started pre-COVID or in the middle? What are you seeing from the finance side as you're approaching the market with these development projects?
Well, we actually began the due diligence before COVID on this one in Louisville, and it took us quite a while because the pandemic did throw everything up into a tizzy, and mostly it was because of the fact that traditional lenders were doing all with a PPP. And in the past, we have worked with more private equity firms that act as lenders, and we were trying to avoid that because of the interest rates and the terms. We felt that in this market, we should have been able to get more conventional bank financing rather than going the private equity route. And so it took a while to get through that process, and we felt that we had some really good terms that we were working with. And so we're in the process now of trying to get those things closed and get them finalized. And, based upon the term sheets we signed, they are great compared to what we've had in the past. But, we obviously have to get all the way through the closing before every I is dotted and T is crossed. But what we're seeing across the board is if we're going for non-recourse for the development one, we're doing it from ground up, which is a little bit different than what we're doing with the conversions. I think ground up is a little bit different animal than conversions because we already have income coming in. They were projecting, upper single digit interest rates during the development process. So it's a little bit higher than what we would expect. So we are seeing some creep there.
Mm-hmm. And then that's kind of what we're seeing as well. We've got various projects right now that are on the board for development, and we also have some conversions, which we're financing out of those construction loans, those high single-digit loans, and getting either more bridge financing or permanent financing on those. And it seems like the banks are still dialing back just a little bit on the either loan-to-cost or LTV and equity thresholds. Their liquidity thresholds are maybe a little bit higher, but right now we're very optimistic that for the foreseeable future that the projects, at least that we've identified for the balance of this year, should get funded. So all looks good from this standpoint on our end. Anything else that you're seeing out there in the marketplace that has changed from a development standpoint that may make things a little more difficult? For one, we saw from one of the large steel suppliers that we may be seeing another increase in steel. Is there, as you're getting into and bidding these projects, anything else that you're seeing in the economy that people should be aware of or that you're trying to head off at the moment?
Well, from a development point of view, the biggest thing we always look for is the willingness of local communities for entitlements in terms of zoning. So for us, that's always the biggest number one factor. So, in a recession, municipalities tend to be more fluid or liberal in their entitlements because they're trying to encourage economic development. And when the economies are booming, then that's when they become a little bit more stringent, or they don't give as many concessions. So from our greatest development from a zoning perspective has always been during recessions. Our shortest time frame, in fact, the first project that we did in self-storage, thanks to your client, we got it rezoned in 2 months, which is unheard of because it takes 30-day notification for one meeting and 30-day notification for the second meeting. And so that's why it was a 2-month process. In non-recessionary periods, it's much longer. It could take, a year. So that's the first thing that we see there. We are seeing, steel has a great fluctuation on the construction cost, but then labor is the other tough one. So in recession, other areas of construction tends to slow down And that's when the labor cost tends to become more fluid and we get better pricing during the recessionary market. So in that factor, we can, if steel goes up, we can save the money on labor because people are looking for work. So we're taking big new steps in how we're going about the bidding process on our project in Louisville in terms of documentation, in terms of how we're distributing that to the different subcontractors and marketing that to attract people that want to work. And one of the things that we've said is that even in the pandemic, we kept every one of our job sites opened up. We didn't lose one day of construction because of the pandemic. And more importantly, we kept everyone safe. We didn't get one case of COVID on our job sites. So we were very pleased with that.
Mm-hmm. And that's key because there are some folks that are unwilling, the general contractors, to bid if they know that first of all you're in an area in which there is a threat of being shut down, but also if you, as the promoter or the master developer of the project, if you will, has a tendency to close up shop when that happens. And so all things that general contractors are looking for. Now, I'll tell you one thing that we did in one of our last projects. It's still ongoing, but through the bidding process and right up until we began to break ground was we put this project out to bid and let them know that there could be, if you wanted to, in the bid, be a share in any cost savings as the project went on, not only pre-bid, but also final construction. So instead of having the normal contingencies in, whether it be 5 to 10%, and then having them either eat that up and then coming back and asking for more because there's overages and everything is a change order, we took a little different approach that said, okay, well, submit us a bid, a competitive bid, but also if through the rest of the bidding process, if you were awarded the bid and then you go back out to your subcontractors and you beat them up a little bit. Well, we don't beat up our subcontractors, but we ask them to sharpen their pencil, and if there's a savings there, then it's a 50% share of the cost savings, or 10%, or 90%, whatever that looks like. And I'll tell you, I like the results that I've seen on this last project that we're developing in Chicago. And I think from this point forward, we're going to look at a bidding process like that. And so, Scott, I know that, through several conversations that you and I have had over the years, you've uncovered and looked under every rock possible to be able to make these projects work, especially when it comes to conversions by way of historical tax credits and TIFs and opportunity zones and PACE funding. And we appreciate all that you bring to the mastermind with that. Tell me what's in your bag of tricks right now. We've got the SBA is making 6 months payments for us and no fees. The CARES Act provided some benefits for some of our equity players last year to be able to borrow more to help us bridge the gap. But what are you looking at right now? When you lay out a project, what are the things that you're trying to make a part of this to make it make sense economically?
Well, right now, we have used, in fact, we now own a national park as of yesterday. So
congratulations. Is there a moose out front with a microphone?
Exactly. So our project in Milwaukee did finally get the final approval from the federal government that we're a national park. So, well, I text everybody in the group, said we now own a national park.
Yeah, I expect you to add that after your signature in email and a business card and elsewhere.
The owner of national parks.
Yes.
So we have used historic tax credits. We have opportunity zones, PACE financing, as well as we've looked at selling off different assets like the cell towers. Right now, I think the biggest thing we are continuing the opportunity zones. That's the biggest one. Our lender in Kentucky did not want us to use PACE. They prefer not having the PACE component, so we took that one off the table. But I think the biggest thing right now is we're looking at what are the revisions in the tax code that's going to be impacting our investors the most. So we found that for about 50% of our investors, it's all about rate of return. For the other 50% of our investors, not that they discount the rate of return, but they're also looking specifically at what are the tax shelters or opportunities that we can create. So is cost segregation going to be taken off the board? Is it going to be, capital gains, how they're going to be doing that? And so we're waiting to see what this new administration is going to be doing in terms of how we're going to be, again, what element of the tax code that we can try to implement most readily. So for us, it's right now, it's waiting to see. I mean, that's the biggest thing, because I've heard everything from they're going to take away the 1031 exchanges. I mean, that's a
Mhm.
huge one for real estate.
Mhm.
We don't get into too much of the 1031s, but we do have investors that have utilized those things. So if that's taken off the board, that could be freeing up a lot of capital right there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest question mark looming right now, and we've already been taking some measures and looking at ways to get around that if that is the case. Currently, we are looking at folks to invest with us with their 1031 tax deferred exchange, and it's difficult if there's multiple investors in a project, except for the fact that we've been able to create a tick and allow them to be able to do that. It's a little messier. It's not as clean, but it allows them to get that tax advantage of investing into a syndication where otherwise they would just have to be the sole investor in a project to carry those losses forward. So that's one of them. A couple of the other pieces, I think what we can expect is that anything that we enjoy the benefit of right now may go away, and so we're looking at that as we approach projects and also in our underwriting. So just curious, is that as you look at projects right now that maybe you've already identified that some of those benefits, if you will, or a different environment is going to have a hand in this. How have you changed, if at all, right now, your underwriting and the way that you approach some of the projects that you're looking at that's on the board right now?
Well, the first thing that we did is we don't ever take those things into our underwriting assumptions because of the fact that let's just say we have 10 different investors. Um, no one's tax return or tax situation is going to be exactly the same. So we can't make those broad assumptions. So all of our underwriting doesn't take into those things. We always view that as gravy or as bonus material. And so what we're trying to do is making sure I'm underwriting that our lease up projections and our cash flow is strong in terms of this market because of the fact that right now that's where I see the greatest volatility. And are we looking at the same markets? Are people going to cities as much as they were in the past, or is that going to slow down our absorption, those sorts of things? So I think in the way in which people are living their life these days, there's been a shift. We're trying to be conservative in terms of what is that shift and making sure that we're adjusting towards that to make, to not get out over our skis, if you will.
Hmm. And I would say that we are as well. And as we look at these projects, we know that the way that people live and they are looking, and it's not just pandemic related, people are looking for community. And so we're seeing many infill locations and conversions of different buildings into more of a community style living, whether that be in an older aging population where they want to have some open spaces and still be in a place where it's not assisted living per se, but it is similar to a Florida style, for those of us who live in the Midwest, similar to a Florida style type of living arrangement, but being in more of a multifamily and a blending of both, where there are activity levels and there are some open spaces and areas, but within a city environment as well. And we're seeing a lot of repurposing of real estate. This pandemic, once again, has caused another major shift and very abruptly in our economy, and retail has once again taken a hit. And we have several projects, and several of our business associates, as you know, Scott, are moving forward with the redevelopment and of different retail assets and big boxes. Is that beyond the projects that you have right now? Has that been a target? I know you've got ground up. You're a master at conversions, and we all like to find a good conversion project because it's quicker to market. But has that been a focus of yours? Are you chomping at the bit to get involved in some of these other projects as those pieces come out to the marketplace, or just in a sit back and wait and see mode?
No, we're putting we're going forward. We're not taking our foot off the gas. The big boxes are they're phenomenal from a conversion point of view because they have all the electrical systems and HVAC and fire suppression already done. So there's a lot of economies of scale there. For us, the biggest challenge has been the zoning. To find a project that the municipality will allow it to be converted to. And I think that's where the recession or this change in this economy is going to be a wake up call for these municipalities thinking like, the sales tax not going to be there. What's going to happen with your real estate tax if you don't do these things? And that's been the biggest challenge is just replacing that tax loss for the municipalities in terms of their willingness to do this. So, the ones it's going to be balancing out that retail. That's the biggest component for the big boxes. And We have heard of people that, have backed out of different development deals because of the fact that the banks would not, they basically washed the retail component of the project. They didn't consider the income off of it, which obviously alters the overall economics of the project. So it's a fine line, and we're gonna have to see how much of it we can get done within it. But leasing a big box will never work. We gotta acquire it and make sure that we own the asset. That's the only way it will fundamentally work from an economics point of view.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, the balance, I mean, it is a fine line. And what we're finding right now, at least that we see, is that the city needs to come to the place where they realize that retail is not going to be replaced with retail, and they're not going to get that tax revenue coming in, that it is going to be repurposed as a something. And the owners, the holder of that big box, whether it be the retail, if it hasn't gone defunct or into receivership, it may be the city or some other equity group, they need to realize that most likely it is going to be a lesser use, and the longer it sits out there on the market, then hopefully it'll come to that place where you can then purchase it at the right price per square foot without waiting too long and having somebody else snatch it up. And so, what we're seeing right now is we feel, somewhere around third or fourth quarter is when some of the cities, I think, may be amenable to these boxes that have been vacant since last year, since immediately after the pandemic hit. And understanding that, hey, here's what's happening around the country. Here's what, and we're showing them, here's what your cohorts are doing in these other cities with these projects, and they're getting them back up and rolling and getting that tax revenue in place, but not waiting for a revision to your master plan because it's happening whether you would like it or not. And to the point that we're using land use attorneys that are telling that story for us, because who are we but just the developers who want it and be able to repurpose this. And so bringing in some professionals to help is what another avenue that we've been taking as well. So the focus is foot on the gas, and we are as well, making hay while the sun's shining, as they say. We've got very inexpensive debt, and we've got no lack or no shortage of projects that we're working on this end as well. Tell us some of the other challenges, pitfalls. It could be in the marketplace from a 30,000 foot view, or just any of the challenges. We've been talking about nothing but development at this time, Scott. Tell us some of the challenges that perhaps you're seeing in the marketplace, or maybe new developers or people that are looking to convert projects are running to, or that you ran into in the beginning.
Well, I think another challenge that we're facing is just controlling our operating expenses once we're operating, and making sure that we're in alignment there. And so one of the things that we have done to get a better control over that is we've established our own brand, One Stop Self Storage. And so because we felt that some of our operating expenses were not always being accounted for, and despite our inquiries and our questions, we felt that we weren't getting sufficient answers. And so we wanted greater accountability. We wanted greater transparency. And so that's why we're going to be going down this road. And, I think collectively we've talked about this as the mastermind. If we're all operating under a similar system, then we can begin packaging these things. So we did have, in fact, a call today where someone was calling to inquire about acquiring a package of our portfolio. And so we are seeing that out there, that, call it the mid REITs, not the large REITs, but the mid REITs are expanding, and they're looking for stuff that is developed and done. And so, we're going to entertain it, but, as we said to them, we're real estate developers. So everything's for sale at the right price, but we're not just looking to move these things. We do have a long-term plan. So we're not just going to dump it on the cheap.
Yeah, funny you say that. We've had a couple calls as well, and it really happened as a result of the fact that where debt is today, a lot of these projects that we had scheduled to look at refinance, and whether they have a prepayment penalty on it or not, we've now taken a step back and looked at our entire portfolio, and I began making some of those calls and introductions, and we're going to begin looking at the entire portfolio from perhaps a refinance standpoint and getting less expensive debt, but giving us that flexibility without prepayment penalties, or at least exorbitant, so that we can begin to then go out and begin to market some of these projects, as is in our master plan. But as a result of that, somehow word got out, and we also have had some folks that have been sniffing around and looking at picking off several projects, or looking at a portion of our portfolio, because the mid REITs, and there's a whole lot of folks that are hungry and they're getting mobilized, and they realize it's getting competitive, which makes it good for us as sellers if we can produce those into the marketplace. So more to come, and I'm looking forward to chatting about that at the mastermind that we have coming up here in a couple of weeks as well. And so with that, I appreciate your time, Scott. I know you got a lot going on, a lot on your plate right now, and looking forward to catching up and hearing a little bit more about that in a couple of weeks. But if you would, in the last few minutes that we got here, what kind of words of wisdom do you have for folks that are looking at storage in 2021? Perhaps pitfalls to avoid, or ways that they should be looking into the market, and why they should be taking advantage of the market right now.
Well, I think in any market, the pitfall is overpaying. And I think that, some of the pricing that I've seen out there of things I've been trading are incredibly aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
We always say that you make your money on the buy, not on the sell.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're the first one to come up with that expression,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's a very, a truth within the real estate. So, our caution is don't get too aggressive in this marketplace. Make sure it's a good deal. In fact, we pulled out of one because with the development on it, we were about a $500,000 spread with between what the seller wanted, and we were, originally the assumption was buying it on the value add, but we recognized in this market you can't buy property on the value add. You got to buy it
Mm-hmm.
on what the current economics are,
Mm-hmm.
and the numbers just didn't support it. So rather than getting too aggressive, the group decided to pull out of it, and I fully agree with it. I felt that if that's the best decision, then let's not pursue it. The amount of time that we spent on the development process, and it was a phenomenal community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they had the great pre-entitlement process where we submitted a plan, and within a week they had every department on a group call going through what it would take to get this project approved.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the best thing I've ever experienced. In fact, I wrote the mayor a letter saying how impressed I was with her. I mean, I wish I could have worked in that community just to experience it. It was that good, but the economics weren't there, so we had to pull out of it. But I think that's the biggest takeaway right now is don't get too aggressive. Be patient. Don't get caught up in like, hey, it's a recession, this is the time to buy. Make sure it's a good deal. So because otherwise you're gonna be fighting it for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, many folks look at on the outside and they hear all of the positive news about self-storage and the market right now, and that there is low interest rates, and they feel like they can just jump into the stream and it'll carry them along, whether they're good owners or operators or not, and that they have this big wind in their sail. But at the end of the day, the economics have to make sense. We've seen time and time again people that are excited. They set a goal to get into their first self-storage facility or their ramp up their portfolio, and then when they put that out there to everybody, they feel like they need to, for fear of being shamed, they have to go out and find a project. And so they may even buy one just to tell everyone they satisfied their goal, only to find out that, this isn't the best. And I'll make it up on the next one is not a good strategy for investing in real estate. Every project has to make sense. So I appreciate that. And I will tell you, it's always unfortunate when you find a city that gets it, that has a master plan, and they're working for you to get something to work, only to find that the project doesn't work, because so many times it's the opposite. We're facing opposition from the city and or remonstrance from the neighbors. So that's a bummer, but that is one of the areas in which I only touch on that, because that's one of the areas that we're stepping up this year is really creating a package to not only promote but put self-storage in the best light, and the reasons why they want these projects because of the low impact and the revenue that it does generate and the service that it provides in a marketplace. And so we've doubled down on the marketing of any of our projects as we go into these locations and into those city and planning meetings.
Absolutely. It was interesting in this one. They had the distinction between mini storage and self-storage. And the distinction was whether the doors faced to the outside or if you had to go into the building to go access the doors.
Okay, that's very.
And they allowed self-storage, but not mini storage.
Okay. Well, there's a new one, and that's when you just kind of sit on your hands and let it happen, right?
Right, but if you think about it from our point of view in terms of the design, it changed the design of the building. I was like, okay, but thanks for clarifying that on the front end.
Yep.
Rather than getting 3 months down the process.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
So because if I read the code, I see mini storage. I'm thinking that's self-storage.
That's us. Interesting. Well, as we say, yeah, zoning is not always cut and dry. It is certainly not black and white. And when you get to that place, you need to go down and even determine whether self-storage is allowed, or if there's a variance or permitted use. You need to go down and talk to the folks down there and talk about projects and what needs to be done, because there's no standardization. It is all across the board with every municipality. So and yet there we have another example of why it's different and how it's different.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Scott, again, I appreciate your time. If you would, before we leave, how about you take your pick, either a parting quote, something that you've lived by that's helped you to succeed in real estate and in life, or perhaps even a good book that you've been reading recently that you recommend.
Well, I'm going to offer a word of wisdom that my mentor gave us. He said, look at life through three lenses: your best case scenario, your worst case scenario, and what's most likely going to happen. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We always assume best case. Okay, if best case happens, great. If worst case happens and you can still live with that, then move forward. If not, then it's a done deal. Mm-hmm. But never do your projections on best case. Do it on what most likely will happen. And so that's how we really approach it. We look down the middle. We try to shoot down the middle of the fairway, as opposed to being overly aggressive.
Yeah, agree 100%. And as you say that's the reason why when it comes to self-storage and looking at even underwriting a facility, here's your best case scenario. Here's realistically what it's done over the past 12 months, and if everything goes to heck in a handbasket, here's where it is. And if you're comfortable with all three of those numbers, then it's time to move forward. But if any of those don't look right, then it's time to move on. So good for self-storage and good lesson for life as well. Yeah. All right, my friend, again, I appreciate you and appreciate your time today, and looking forward to getting together down in Orlando and perhaps on the golf course after the meeting as well.
Yeah, in a few short weeks, I'm looking forward to it. All right. As opposed to this big 2 feet of snow outside my window right now.
A little bit of ours is melted, but for the rest of you that don't live in the Midwest, that are down south, you don't know what you're missing. All right, thanks, Scott. Take care.
Thank you very much.
See you soon.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye now. Hey gang, wait, 3 things before you leave. First, don't forget to subscribe to the Self Storage Podcast and turn on your notifications so you never miss another episode. And while you're there, please leave us a 5-star review if you like the show. Second, be sure to share your favorite episodes and more via Instagram, and don't forget to tag us. And lastly, head to the links in the show description and hit the follow and subscribe button on Twitter and Facebook to get a front row seat as we grow and scale our business and bring you along with us. Take care.